Obviously, when teaching ESL, we talk a lot about English, but that's not the only thing that I want to teach my students. So today, let me share one of my favorite lessons, my career exploration lesson plan. I'm going to lay everything out so you can duplicate it in your classes. My name is Megan. I've been an ESL teacher in China for the past 10 years. I make videos all about life in China, lesson planning, and ESL ideas. Today, let me share my entire lesson plan for my career exploration lesson. Now, like I mentioned, I love teaching students more than just English. I want to prepare them for success after graduation. And I find that a lot of students haven't really considered what they want to do after graduation. And this can be a really helpful tool to help them start thinking about it. And of course, to help them practice their English as well. This lesson plan has 5 different parts, but can be fully customized according to your student's level or your student's age or their ability. You could also pick and choose some of these activities and leave behind others. Let me share with you the 5 different activities I do for this lesson. This also works really great as a bonus lesson. The goal of this lesson is to help students consider their future careers. The first question, the first activity we do is we ask the question, what type of work satisfies you? Students are used to being asked questions like, what job do you want? And in that situation, they're focused on the title. They're focused on jobs that they're familiar with, that they've heard about before, like a doctor, a teacher, a lawyer. But to be honest, most people don't have jobs like that. They work in offices. They might not be a lawyer, but they might be a paralegal. Maybe they're not a doctor, but maybe they work for an insurance office. Maybe they're not a doctor, but they're a receptionist at a health clinic. There are so many jobs out there, and I find that my students struggle when thinking about titles. So instead of thinking about job titles, let's think about the work that you do day in and day out. So I ask students to write down the answers to what type of work satisfies you. Now, work is work, right? When I tell the students, do you want to do homework? And they always say, no. I also say, do you think when you're 40 years old, you're gonna be so excited to wake up and go to work every day? Maybe not. But the truth of the matter is, you have to do homework when you're a student and you have to work after you graduate. So why not think about the work that is satisfying to you? For example, I really enjoy short-term projects. I enjoy working independently. I enjoy repeated systems, like doing the same thing but with different content. I enjoy sharing information and I enjoy communicating with a lot of different people. So what does that look like as a teacher? Actually, being a teacher really matches up with the type of work that is satisfying to me. I enjoy short-term projects and I do that all the time as a teacher. Every week or every day you have a different lesson plan that you have to prepare, and when you finish that lesson plan, your project is finished. So I have a constant rush of dopamine of finishing this project, finishing this project, finishing this project. I enjoy working independently, which I do. I tell the students, do you see my boss in the classroom with us right now? No, I get to plan my lessons independently and I get to teach independently. So I enjoy that type of work. I enjoy repeated systems with varying content. Each week, I do the same thing. I go through the same organizational structure to plan my lessons, but each week we have totally different topics, which keeps it fresh and interesting for me. I enjoy sharing information. Teaching. I enjoy communicating with a lot of different people, which I get to do. I have over 400 students each semester. So every day when I go to work, I'm communicating with different people. I tell them if I had to work in a small office with just like 10 or 20 people, I would go crazy because I don't want to talk to the same 10 or 20 people every single day. I tell them when I was a student, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a teacher, but if I had thought about teaching this way as the type of work that a teacher does day in and day out, I might have been more open to the idea because I realized that this type of work is satisfying to me. And if I take this list and look at other careers, I might discover a career I hadn't thought of before. For example, I think I could be really satisfied as a real estate agent, according to my list, because real estate agents also have short-term projects. They get a listing and they have to sell it. They have repeated systems with varying content. They go through the same process of selling a house each time, but the buyer is always different and the house is always different. They do work independently. They go out and they meet their customers and they show them the listings. They also communicate with a ton of different people all the time. So according to this list, I think I could be satisfied as a realtor, and maybe I would never have thought about that job before. And I give them all of these examples. I lay it all out because usually students are a little bit confused. Maybe they've never thought about their future career in this way. Then I give them a few minutes and I ask them to write their own list. You know, if you have to do homework, what type of homework do you like? Do you like to write or do you like to present? Do you like to work in groups or do you like to work alone? Do you like to be creative and share your own opinions about things? Or do you like to do something like mathematical equations? I give them a bunch of ideas and I share my own suggestions and I have them write it down. Then, after I've given them a few minutes to write down their list, they have to share with their partner so they can still practice speaking English, and they often will help each other and give each other ideas of what kind of job might be suitable for them. The second question I ask students is to think a little bit more specifically about the type of job and the type of working environment that they are looking for. I ask students to write down a list of things that they're looking for in a job. For example, maybe some students are really looking for a big company with lots of opportunities for promotion. That's me. I really like the feeling of climbing the career ladder, of leveling up, of constantly seeing my actual progress at a company. Maybe other students are looking for a job that allows them to travel for business. They would like to travel for business every month. Maybe other students are looking for a job that allows them to have flexible hours and flex time. Maybe some students are looking for a job that has a competitive salary or is a commission-based salary. So I ask them to write down what they think they would want in a job. Now, to be honest, question number 2 is really difficult. What do you want in a job? For students who have never really had a job, that could be difficult to answer. So question number 3 is, what do you not want? Sometimes it's really hard to have a clear idea of what you want, but sometimes you know what you definitely don't want. So I ask students to do the same thing this time, but think of it oppositely. And usually students have no problem with this one. They know what they don't want in a job. So maybe some of them write down that they don't want a commission-based salary. They don't want a job that has crazy overtime. They don't want a job in sales where they constantly have to be pressuring other people to buy something. They don't want a job where they're communicating with a ton of different people all the time. So flipping the question can often help students think about it in a new light. And again, I give my examples for this. For me, I would not really enjoy a commission-based job. I also don't really enjoy jobs where there isn't a clear start time and end time. I'm okay with working overtime, but I just want to know ahead of time how much overtime I'm going to be doing and when I get to leave and when I should show up every single day. I also really enjoy having my weekends be my weekends. I enjoy having Saturday and Sunday be my days off instead of having days off on like a Tuesday or a Thursday. And so when I look at this list of things I don't want, teaching still checks out. I know when my class starts, I know when my class ends. There's no commission in teaching and I don't work and teach on the weekends. But I did mention I might enjoy being a real estate agent, and those things don't match up because usually they are commission based. Usually they don't really know their schedule. If they take a customer to a listing and the customer decides that they do want to buy the house, then maybe they won't be getting off work at the same time they thought they would. And usually people are free on Saturday and Sunday, so they might have to work more on the weekends. So sometimes flipping it to what you don't want can give you a different perspective on on jobs. Question number 4 is about thinking more practically. What type of skills do you want to acquire? Now, I don't want them to only think about the job titles again. For example, if you want to be a teacher, then you need a teaching license. Instead, I want them to think about the actual hard and soft skills that could help them be successful in the future. So, what type of skills do you want to acquire before you graduate? Maybe some students will write down that they need to improve their communication skills. They need to get better at talking to strangers and making small talk. Maybe some students would say that they're interested in something about design, so they really should get better at Photoshop. So understanding what type of skills they might need for future jobs can give students a direction, something to focus on while they're still in school. For my students as English majors, they definitely should be writing down things like, I need to improve my vocabulary, or I need to improve my confidence during speaking. And I often remind them to think about what English skills you will need to acquire as well. And finally, for the 5th activity, you can have students do an interview practice. Now, to be honest, I have an entire lesson plan where we just talk about interviews. If you want, you could have this be a whole nother lesson in and of itself, but I often like to add this to a lesson in a shorter version. So for this, I will just give students a list of common interview questions. Things like, why should we hire you? Can you tell us about a time when you overcame a challenge? Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? I will usually give students a few minutes to write down some ideas and then have them practice with their partner. Have one person be the interviewer, have one person be the interviewee, and then switch. Honestly, students always think this is so easy until they actually do it and they realize that they don't know how to answer the question, can you tell us a little about yourself? They don't know how to confidently describe their strengths, and they also don't know how to confidently describe their weaknesses. So if you want, you could add a little bit of a tip section before they do this and give them a little bit of advice about how to answer these questions. Or you could let them struggle a little bit, because struggling is a very important part of language learning. And then at the end, you could give them some advice about how to improve their answers in the interview questions. Now, like I said, I do have an entirely different lesson plan that's all about interviews, that is more in-depth, because I often do teach senior students who are getting ready to go on interviews. But this could be a very short part of the lesson, just have students practice a couple of questions, or you could expand this to be its own lesson in and of itself. If you would like to see that, let me know in the comments down below. I can make an entire video about my interview lesson where I share tips and I let students practice, and we work step by step through the process of how to do well in interviews, specifically how to do well in speaking English during an interview, because that is an entirely different skill set. So a quick recap of this lesson is, number 1, ask students to identify what type of work satisfies you. Number 2, what characteristics are you looking for in a job? Number 3, what do you not want at a job? Number 4, what skills do you need to acquire, or what skills do you want to acquire before you graduate? And number 5, we just have interview practice. I hope you try this with your students. Even if you just choose one of these questions, it could be a really great conversation at the beginning of class or at the end of class. If you have an extra few minutes, it could be a great conversation for students to practice with. But I hope you try it with your students. I hope it will help them focus on thinking about their jobs a little bit more specifically. Instead of just thinking, what job do I want? They can think about the type of job they want, the type of work they want to do every single day. I do have an article written about it. If you want to see it in written form, you can check that out at atlasteaching.com. I'll have it linked down below. You can also come back here for weekly videos all about ESL teaching lesson plan ideas. I hope this will be a helpful lesson for your students. That's all for today. I will see you next time. Bye.